What is up everyone, welcome back to my channel. I usually put vlogs and makeup videos and all those other kind of videos on my channel, but this year at the starting of 2019 I decided that I will challenge myself to read one book per week. That is 52 books in the entire year, and I also in fact did post my first book review in January. I will link it up here, watch it. But after that I actually got distracted because it was my own sister's wedding. The upload schedule also got a little haywire because of it, but I'm back now, and to make up for all the book review videos that I have missed out on, I'm going to try to post one book review video in the gap of 3 to 4 days so that I can catch up on all the videos that I have missed. And I think by April end we should be back on track, and I would go back to posting one book review each week. But up until then you're gonna have to see a lot of book reviews very frequently. And that being said, the book that I'm reviewing today is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Let me start off by giving you guys like a little bit of an introduction of this book. As I just said, it has been written by H.G. Wells. It was published a long time ago, at least for me. It was published in the year 1895, and that actually shows in its language. I wouldn't say that this language is archaic, but the language is most certainly very different from what contemporary writers use. If you're someone who's very adept to reading literature in the contemporary time and phrases and like that swift fluent language, you may find the language of this book a little frustrating, especially if you're someone who's not very in tune with reading, is not a very regular reader, and you're just trying to get back to reading. This is not a book that I would recommend to you. But that being said, the book is great. The language, as I just said, seems a little frustrating in the beginning, but as in when you move forward with the book, you will start enjoying. You will start first of all understanding the language, because you would have a little bit of an idea of the characters and the area and the setting, and then the language in which this book has been written will make sense to you, and then towards the end you will enjoy that language. That being said, I also had to sit down with a dictionary throughout while reading this book, because there were words that I did not know. Was like, if I'm remembering it correctly, there's this word called stolid. That's how you pronounce it, stolid, and I didn't know its meaning up until I read this book. And then there are a lot of other words that I didn't know, and I read from this book, which I think is the point of reading books. This book by H.G. Wells is also regarded as one of the, actually I wouldn't say one of the, this book is regarded as the genesis of time travel fiction, or all these movies and books that you see with the plot of time travel and all of that stuff, that kind of a science fiction genre, because this book was one of the first books that talked about time travel and just brought that kind of an imagination into the literary circle. I mean, at least that's what the prologue says, and that's what reviews on the internet say, and considering that it was published a long time ago, I am going to believe that fact. Okay, so now for the plot of this story, I'm gonna try and give you guys not the entire sequence of what happens in the story, but like a very general plot, so that would make you want to read this book. And there is also a very good plot twist in the last chapter that I will not say in this video, so that you guys will want to go and read this book, because it's a very short book. If I give you guys exactly what happens in the review, you will really not want to read the book, because there's really not much to it. All of the story that's in this book has been exploited in the modern times, and while you'll be reading this, you will feel like this is like an amalgamation of everything that we see now in modern era, sci-fi movies and all of that. So I'm not going to give you guys the entire story, that's the point, but I will give you guys a little bit of a plot so that interests you into reading this book. That being said, the protagonist of this book is this man whose name we don't know. He's just called the time traveler throughout the book. The book starts with this group of men in his house, in his drawing room, having a conversation about how time can be the fourth dimension. And then there are differing viewpoints within those group of men, because a lot of them belong to completely different schools of thought. Someone's a psychologist, someone's a scientist, someone's a teacher, so they all have very differing thoughts. But then the time traveler proceeds to show them this small little what do you call, a prototype, a small prototype of the time machine that he eventually succeeds to make in the book further. And all of them are pretty amazed by it. Some of them feel like he's lying and this thing will not actually work, but then they all decide that a week later they would all come back to his house and they would discuss his further findings and whatever happens. Okay, so cut cut to the next week. Okay, everyone's in his drawing room, everyone's waiting for him, and he's nowhere to be found. Okay, and a lot of hours pass by, and he randomly comes in, completely disheveled, really rusty. His clothes are completely soiled. He's got a few wounds, and like he is physically not in a good shape. And when he enters the house, he doesn't really interact with this group of men who are back to his house after a week to listen to what his further findings have been. Did he actually try out the machine and all of that? So he does not interact with any of them. He just straight goes into the shower, he just gets freshened up, and then he comes back, and then he hogs, okay, and he starts eating. So like as if he has been starving for a week. Okay, and after he's done eating, he starts telling them about where exactly he has been in the past whole week, if he actually tried out the machine, and if he did, where did he travel to, which year did he travel to. And that takes up the majority part of the book. The entire book is a flashback storytelling. I don't know if that's a real word, but basically he's in the present and then he recalls everything that happened in the past week, where he traveled in the time machine, what all things he faced, what all he saw, to the group of men throughout the book. Now I feel like I should be telling you guys a little bit about where he traveled to, so I'm just gonna give like a very, very crude, small, abridged version of it. He travels far, far, far into the future, where humanity is not present. I mean, civilization is there, but humans are not there. But there is this, really weird and messed up, evolved version of human beings present in this era on the earth, and they are divided into two types. Okay, Eloys and Morlocks. Okay, Eloys are supposed to be like good and cute and sweet creatures, but Morlocks are supposed to be like bad, carnivorous, and they live underground and all of that. So basically the world is now divided into two types of civilization, two types of living creatures. One of them is good, one of them is bad. One of them lives above the ground, enjoys all the fruits and all the scenery and all of that, and the Morlocks, the ones who live underground, are bad, and they carry out thievery, they carry out murder, they carry out all of these bad things. The time traveler is seen telling the group of men that when he first reached this time zone, this particular year, he is very confused because these creatures, they seem to be really dumb, that they don't have language of any sort. Whatever they do is very, very ununderstandable for the time traveler, so he's very confused. But eventually he sort of learns more about their culture, learns more about how they evolved and how they perform daily activities, what do they do in the entire day, how is their civilization different from the one that we have in the present day. So these are things that he discovers while he moves forward in the recalling of what happened in the last week. By the end of the first day of him living in this year, his time machine actually gets stolen by the Morlocks, which he does not find out for quite some time. He finds out eventually after picking up a bit of clues and bits and pieces of information. And then the story goes how he just retrieves his time machine, what all problems he faces. He also becomes really good pals with this one Eloy, whom he saved from drowning in the lake. Eventually he is able to move back to the present time, because that's how he's telling the story to these group of men. But that happens after a lot of moving back and forth along the time zones. He moves a lot into the future. If I'm not wrong, he never really travels back to the past. He only moves towards the future in this book. And when he does move really, really farther away in the future, he also notices a lot of stark contrasts, a lot of grim things that he sees in the far, far, far future, farther than the year that he just traveled to, where the only sign of life is this big black blob kind of a creature with spider legs, and that's it, that's all he can see. And there's an eclipse on the sun, and that actually paints a very grim picture of the future, which is kind of true. I mean, considering what we're doing to the environment, to the nature right now, we are most certainly going to face things like that, where the earth will just 24/7 be dark. There would be no sunlight because the sun would be gone. We would have exhausted it some way. I know it's impossible. I mean, actually no, it's not impossible. I have faith in humans to destroy inexhaustible resources like that as well, through our greed and all of that. But that brings me to the next point that I wanted to say. This book also, despite being categorized under fiction, talks about things that will really make you feel like it's the truth. They will make you correlate with things that actually happen in real life. So H.G. Wells also relates the story of this book, the plot of this book, to capitalism that is very prevalent in today's world, and even was when this book was written. It's just multiplied 20 million times now. So that being said, the book also talks in little bits and pieces about capitalism and exploitation of the rich and the poor. It does talk a lot about this particular point that I just said. Actually, I'm recalling it right now, that how the rich people just want to stay in the comfort of all the riches and possessions and everything that they have, and they just want to suck the blood out of the working class and the people who are actually economically or socially beneath them. And yeah, this book really does talk about it, and that is the comparison that the writer draws between the Eloys and the Morlocks. Remember the two versions of not humans, but two versions of these weird creatures which are apparently some evolved version of humans. Eloys, who live above the ground, and Morlocks, who live below the ground. They are compared to the rich and the poor classes in the society, in the current society, and that is actually very interesting to read. So that is another reason why you should read this book. Moving on, after the protagonist sees and witnesses the really dark and bad and just negative future that he witnesses through his travel in the time machine, he eventually manages to come back to the present time to tell the story, and that's how he's recalling everything at the dinner table right now. But then a day after that, something really major happens, which I will not tell you right now, but that is the climax of the book. And I think that particular ending we've seen happen a lot of times in movies now, because this book, as I said, is the genesis of a lot of science fiction that we see nowadays. But reading it and visualizing that someone visualized that and put it into literature at that time is really fun. So I want you guys to read this book. I would rate it a 7 out of a 10. Okay, simply because like there's language and there's stuff that I did not understand, and I felt like this was a very short book, and in parts it seemed like a drag. But when it comes to the story of it and how engrossed I was in the book, definitely a good read. And if you're someone who's trying to expand their reading horizon, this is something in fiction that I absolutely recommend. This is where we end the video. I hope you guys liked this review of The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Let me know in the comment box below if you have read this book, and if you have, do you like it? What do you rate it out of 5, out of 10, whatever? What are your comments on it? If you are someone who's planning to read it, maybe leave a comment after you read it. And I'm not really sure what exact book I would be reviewing next, but another book review will be up within next 3 to 4 days, I hope. But that being said, I'm going to meet you guys within the next 3 days with another book review, so stay tuned for that, and like, share, subscribe. I'm going to see you guys later. Bye.